Again, this is It Prophecy here on Israel National Radio, Root Sheva, and the show is podcasted and syndicated as Messiah Hour on YouTube. You can go to YouTube, type in Messiah Hour with Ari Lewis, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's free to do so, and the email is messiahhour@gmail.com. Rabbi, let's talk about this character of Peter, because in Christianity there's a concept that after a person dies, if they go to heaven, they see St. Peter at the pearly gates. Does he have any Jewish roots by chance?
Well, he has Jewish roots. His name was Peter. He was a Jew. He was a Jewish fisherman, right? And he was the first and primary apostle of Jesus, who said, until now you've been a fisher of fish, a catcher of fish, but I'm going to make you a catcher of men. And this idea of he's the one who catches us all. Now, in the Jewish tradition, right, we have it that it's Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu, of course, was the first convert, right? He's Av L'Geri. Part of what they're doing with Peter by setting him up at the pearly gates is modeling him after Avraham Avinu. And in the same way that Avraham Avinu was the beginning of a covenant, so too Peter was the first to accept Jesus as Messiah. And therefore the kingdom of God, he was the first convert to the kingdom of God in that view. But the notion of the Av Hagerim sitting at the gates and accepting people in is actually a Jewish concept, which we have as Avraham Avinu.
Now, also in the Jewish history, Jewish stories, we have a person named Shimon HaTzadik. Was anyone in Christianity taken from that person or that story?
No, there's a confusion. I think you're a little confused. Shimon HaTzadik was Mishayarei Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, right? And he was the high priest at the time of Alexander the Great. And Shimon HaTzadik went to meet Alexander the Great in the Bigdei Kahuna, which was a controversial thing to do, but he went and he greeted him. Alexander had a dream about him. And this is what sort of set up Alexander, sort of accepted the Jews and didn't make war with the Jews and allowed the Jews to be Jewish and to stay in Eretz Yisrael, and went off to go check out India. Till he got to India and he started tripping out, and he decided he didn't want to be a conqueror and he wanted to be a philosopher, and he sat and meditated for the rest of his life. But in our books, Alexander the Great is a good guy. You know, other emperors are looked at as horrible, evil, the Nebuchadnezzar and the Roman emperors and Paro, and generally the great emperors of the Goyim are looked at as bad guys. Nevertheless, we have Alexander, we have Rabbi Alexander in the Gemara. You know, we've got Alexander Henoch. The name Alexander was incorporated into the Jewish body as a good guy. We like him. And that was because of Shimon HaTzadik. Now, Shimon ben Schachter, some people want to say Shimon ben Schachter is the Apostle Peter. His name is clearly Shimon. So Shimon, Peter, St. Peter was clearly a Jew. No question, he was a Jew. He was not a very learned Jew, but he was a very pious Jew. You know, and in a certain way, Jesus and the whole thing they were doing was, comes again around in the times of the Baal Shem Tov and Chassidus, where people who were not necessarily scholars can still be pious. Right? Now, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, Lo Amar Chassid. If you're completely unlearned, you can't really be pious. And there's what to say about that, and you can get into the whole thing about what's it mean, that why are they called Chassidim if they weren't this, but really the Chassidim in the Baal Shem Tov were very learned, so that's a whole other question. But what you do have is that he was the foundation of the church. And it's interesting to Peter comes from the word stone, and that he was the foundation stone, like the keystone of Jesus' church. Right, of the body of the people that came to be followers of Jesus. And so in that way, in the same way that Avraham Avinu, right, Even Masu Habonim, Rosh Pinah, the stone that the builders refused, will be the head cornerstone. So again, what you have is Peter being compared to Avraham Avinu as the beginning of a new covenant. Right? And so the people, the Brit HaChadashah, the New Testament, trace Peter as the foundation stone and as their version of Avraham Avinu. Although he's not directly descendant of all Christians, he became the first. He went to Rome and was the first pope, and so they would call him father, right? The father is supposed to be father of all of the believers, in the same way that Avraham Avinu likes obligating. So he's clearly, and again, this is the part that goes with the Pauline project of modeling the New Testament community after the Jews of the New Israel. And while after John, and the whole thing, you get the replacement theology of like we're the New Israel and the old one has been rejected. But Paul certainly didn't play that game, and was saying no. Along with Jews, now people who would be Christians can participate, right? In the same way we have Erev Rav coming out with Moshe Rabbeinu, and these are people. Now the Erev Rav did become Jewish; they all converted, so to speak, at Mount Sinai. We all converted at Mount Sinai. But here what you have is people who are along. They're participating in Pnei Noach. They're part of the project of Tikkun Olam, of the story, right? You have the famous machloket in the Gemara between what's the klal gadol b'Torah, and Rabbi Akiva there says v'ahavta l'recha kamocha, and I believe it's Rabbi Yosef I think who says zeh sefer told of Adam, that the klal gadol b'Torah, the thing that binds everybody together to the Torah, this is the book of the histories of mankind. And the people that participate in this world as part of the living continuation of the story that began in the Torah, this is what makes it, this is the essence of the Torah. This is the great thing, is that the Torah is true and we're the continuation of this book. And so for someone who attaches himself to the Pauline project, that I believe that this guy came, to say that any who would open themselves to God, God's mercy is abundant and ever present, and you can come home, so that's a wonderful thing.
Again, this is a Prophecy here on Israel National Radio, and the show is syndicated as Messiah Hour on YouTube. Go to YouTube, type in Messiah Hour with Ari Lewis, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Again, messiahhour@gmail.com. We're continuing the conversation regarding Jewish roots in Christianity, and I wanted to get something clear, Rabbi, of Shituf versus how we perceive Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, because a lot of people say that Moses had a piece of God in him, or part of him was God, or so. I'm not sure if that's mainstream belief, but just tell us the difference between.
Certainly not.
So tell us what Moshe was and how it is not Shituf and it's a different thing.
The story of Moshe Rabbeinu begins, right? We read it last week in the Parsha, that it's a story of a man, first and foremost, of a romance that begins between a man and a woman, and a marriage, or perhaps even a man who had divorced his wife and took her back, despite the fact that still all the children. And he is, in that way, fully human. He's all about man loves a woman, has a baby. Later on, in this week's lecture, we specifically have, once again, the tracing of the history of Moses. Now, it's true that we also have the history of the tracing of the generations till we get to Jesus. Jesus as a contemporary figure in modern Christianity, which includes the doctrine of the virgin birth, is quite different than that, right? That here God is his sort of biological father, this is something which Jews have rejected completely out of him. That no, absolutely not. But the whole point of the Messiah is that he's the son of man, which Jesus, of course, called himself, was the son of man, he's the son of Adam, and he's a fully human being. Now, of course, you have in Christian theology, they'll say, no, he was fully human and fully God. That's the first thing, is the question of the virgin birth, and that under no circumstances would Moses ever be suggested that he is God incarnate or a virgin birth. What you do have with Moses is that he's a prophet, and he's a prophet unlike other prophets. The Quran refers to Jesus also as a prophet, should be noted. That they do ascribe to him that status of prophecy, which we, of course, by that time, had left the age of prophecy and were in the age of Torah, right? Of Torah Shabbat Peh, of Chacham Adif Navi, and that the medium of God's revelation in the time of the Mishnah was not direct prophecy, as it had been in the times of Eliyahu Navi, but Torah Shabbat Peh. And Torah is a different kind of revelation than direct prophecy. But Jesus himself, especially if you look in the Gospel of Mark, and in Matthew also, Jesus really does not claim to be the Messiah. He tries to avoid it. That you say that I am. But what he really claims to be is just the Son of Man, right? To be mankind, doesn't claim to be Messiah, doesn't claim to be king. He really is presenting an idea of, what? Anybody who's going to really claim the history of man, to be the Son of Man, to be Ben Adam, and is willing to properly do tshuva, to open yourself completely to God, and come home and accept the law and accept God in your heart and be, to really do tshuva, you can be an instant tzaddik, and then you can be totally connected to what God had when He created mankind. This idea that tshuva can do, that we can, as individuals, do tshuva for the sin of Adam and Eve, there's nothing new. There's nothing new about that. There's nothing unique about that. That's sort of a theme in all the Torah. When God, Shuvu Alai v'Shuvu Aleichem, come home to me, says God, and I'll be with you. V'shavtem ad Hashem Elokecha, you can do tshuva all the way home to Hashem. This is nothing new. What you do have is, again, with the Gospel of John, is this concept which comes from the Greek pagan religion, is that He is somehow God incarnate. Now, you do have concepts of God incarnate, sort of in Hinduism, and perhaps Jesus is closer to that, that concept there of Krishna, which is right, Krishna and Christ. But that's a whole other conversation.
Now, I heard you say something very interesting one time regarding the Jews at Mount Sinai, that when God spoke to them, we heard it in our own voice. Can you clarify what you said exactly?
Yeah, there's the Midrash Rabbi says that when we heard Anochi, right, God revealed Himself as, I am the Lord your God. And so there's a Midrash that each person heard God's revelation. When we heard God speak, we each heard it in our own voice. There's a one that says, no, we heard it in our Father's voice. Each person heard it, and that's why the mitzvah of Limud comes from Vishinat Levanecha. Right, that the thing is about the son teaching, a father teaching Torah to his sons and daughters. And that, so one opinion in the Midrash says that we heard it in our Father's voice, another opinion says that we heard it in our own voice. I particularly like the idea that we each heard it in our own voice, and that the notion of a cheluk Elohim L'mala mamish, that a person's soul is really a spark of God, is a very powerful idea that we have within us, that spark of godliness. In that way, if you want to follow that idea through, each and every person is in fact sort of incarnation of God, not exclusively, right, and not entirely, but that's what it is. That God breathed into Adam the breath of life, right? The Zohar has that He blew His innermost essence, right, into him, and that's a very beautiful emotion. That way, what the Christians say about Jesus, the Jews say about everybody, right? That He was fully God and fully human, and that's a very interesting idea. And you can follow that through, and it can take you all the way to Rabbi Nachman, and the nanach of each person has to know that they have have within them a piece of messianic spirit, right? That the Ruach HaMashiach is something which is in each person, and that we each need to use our Bechinat Malchut to fix the world, and that each person has to be a little bit of the king. Okay, it's very, very, contemporary to say, we all have a piece of the Messiah. That's cute, and in a deep sense, it's true. Part of the danger of what happens, and the Avodah Zarah element, what makes God Zarah, or a problem of Shituf, is where you say only He was a Meshutaf LaKodesh Baruch Hu. Only He is partner with God. Now, the Gemara says that anyone who sits and learns Torah and is Dan Din Emet, if you come and you manifest the Torah and you Dan Din Emet, you look at the situation in front of you and you react to it in accordance with the Torah and you do what the Torah says in the world, so Nasir Shutav LaKodesh Baruch Hu b'Bris Shemayim b'Mazav Reishis, right? That you become partner to God in creating the world when you enact God's will in the world. This is a Jewish concept, that all of us can be Shutav. Excuse me, that all of us can be partners with God. And that's the notion of covenant. The danger, and I think this is very prevalent in Christianity, among some communities, and others not so much. The danger is that when you put one particular person on a pedestal, say, only He is God manifest, God incarnate, only that. What does that mean about me? That means that I'm essentially not. And the doctrine of original sin, which suggests that I and myself am essentially alienated from God, and that only through the acceptance of Christ inside of me, and the Spirit of God within me, can I come to do tshuva. That's a nice concept, but the difficulty is when you consider yourself already alienated. But if you'd understand that perhaps what Jesus was suggesting, and again I'm talking about Jesus, the literary figure in Paul's writing, suggesting to you that the message that he's coming to bear to the world is a very Jewish message, right? It's the message that you are also in the image of God, and God loves you, and you can be with him, and he forgives you, and he wants you to come home, right? And the mashal of the prodigal son, right, is so powerful in that way of like, we all are like that kid that we were given our inheritance, we went out and we wasted it in Nebuch, and now we come home, and we're expecting to have our father berate us of like, what have you done to my world? But God doesn't do that. He shechts the fatted calf. He says, welcome home, holy son. I missed you. And that we shouldn't have this paranoia and this anxiety in our hearts that God is angry at us. This is not something which is uniquely Christian. This is a very Jewish message, and they got that from us. And again, Paul wants to spread that in the world, that you don't have to be afraid of God. God is not angry at you. And the original sin is that the forgiveness that is offered by Christ, by Mashiach, right, by that Ruach HaMashiach in person, the Rabbi talks about, is accessible to everyone. And the more and more as Christians are starting to understand that it's not about the rejection of humanity and only through that, but that really the message of Jesus, again, I'm talking about the literary figure in Paul's writing, is that if I accept it in God, that I too become God's, to some degree, God incarnate. The more that I'm able to accept myself as a son of man, that I am here, and I am here to come home to the garden, which God put me in.
All right. Yeah. Last question we have. This has been a great discussion. We're going to have to do this again, Mr. Radisheb. The last question I have for you, because there's so many Christians that listen to this program, and they're really interested in Judaism. And is it because of these Jewish roots in Christianity, or is it that they want to see the truth of our Torah? I know this is not such a scholarly question, but just your personal opinion, because we see it all the time, especially recently. A lot of Christians interested in Judaism and want to know more about Torah. Well, why do you think that is?
Well, again, the essence of Christianity is the Torah. It has been perhaps mixed with Avodah Zarah, and that there was a process of what the Jews called Beirut, right? Levarer, to clarify what's what, to put things in. And halachically, borer means to sort things out. Now, far be it from me to say that the truth of Christianity is in Paul and Peter and John became polluted. I'm not, I'm not trying to challenge Christianity in that way. If a person was coming to me as a genuine seeker of God, and you believe that Jesus was a man of God, and if you're not in the headspace of he is God incarnate and I'm not, but if you're ready to say that he is a son of man and I'm a son of man, and he's come to teach us, so it's really the relationship what you're dealing with is of a Rebbe and a Chassid, and if people want to be Chassidim of Jesus, I know another dead rabbi, that has Chassidim. The question of whether Jesus is Kamlatria, if he was resurrected is a whole other question. I don't need to get it. But certainly in the same dynamic that, a person goes to Uman, for example, for Rosh Hashanah, and has a dead Rebbe, and he studies his teachings, and he walks in his way, and he follows the path that he laid out before him, and the Rebbe believes in him and helps him to manifest and guides him. All of these are possible. It's true that Jesus is great, but we do have it marked, so I don't know. But the idea, nevertheless, that a person can have a dead Rebbe is also not foreign to Judaism. And if people, and certainly I think that Rav Shlomo Carlebach, right? Rav Shlomo Carlebach, that every person needs two Rebbes. You need to have Rabbi Nachman and your own Rebbe. And if a person who's Christian wants to say, I've got two Rebbes, I got Rabbi Nachman and I got Jesus, you'll see that they're actually pretty close. And I think that if you examine closely the writings of Paul and the writings of Rabbi Natan, you'll see that there's many similar themes about Dveikut Tzaddik, and that, that you have a tzaddik, and that you can draw the Messianic spirit from him and take him, and he'll guide you in the ways, and believes in you, and you have to know that there's no such thing as Yeush, and there's no such thing as giving up, and that God wants your prayers, and is listening to you, and is close by, and that you're not rejected, and all the difficulties you're going through are for your own good to help you to refine yourself. There's the message, and if you look in Jesus, what he was talking about, the Lord's Prayer is kind of an anachronism. It's nice, and it's a beautiful prayer. It's a very beautiful prayer. But if you look in the pshat there, really what he was trying to get his students to do is to do what to go make up your own prayers, freestyle. And they said, no, they weren't ready, so he just started freestyling. Right? And what came out was, our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name, right? The kingdom come, and all of these things that is reminiscent of the same prayers that we have within the Jewish Siddur. And it's a very lovely prayer. But the ideas of personal prayer, and of Dveikut Tzaddik, and of the law, Goyim don't have so much halacha, but they should be aware of what their responsibilities are according to the 7 mitzvot of Enoch. And for a person who wants to genuinely see Jesus as a Mora Derech, as a path for them, to open the door that, like really in Paul's vision, that a person can connect themselves to the destiny of Am Yisrael and the ultimate destiny of mankind, and they too would be a son of man, and take upon themselves the burden of fixing the world, and knowing that the snake venom, so to speak, can be purged, right? It can be purged through the Torah. And if you look in the Pauline idea that Jesus is, or that humanity, Ben Adam, and Jesus is the example of that, but not as the only one, is the Torah, that we say each person is like a whole Sefer Torah, right? So if I'm the Torah, so the introspection and coming and doing tshuva, coming back to myself, the doors of tshuva are open, and they always have been. And that it was Adam Harrison, right? Adam Rishon that started doing tshuva. And since then, to be a son of man, that's what it means. We got to come home to God.
There you go. Well said. A fascinating conversation. Again, with Rabbi Shlomo Barya Schachter. We really appreciate the time. Thank you so much, and we'll have to do it again. Again, thanks for being on the program today.
Yeah, come. This is great. The whole world should come back to God. Come to Jerusalem. Come visit. Come pray at the Kotel.
All right, and thank everyone to listen as well. Is it Prophecy? Is it National Radio? You can find this episode podcasted on my YouTube channel. That's the Messiah Hour. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Rabbi, for being on the program. Everyone, have a good day. Be well.